Hello and welcome to the Blanket Fort on Painted Hank Pod. I am your host, Adri Hayes, and tonight I'm going to tell you all a personal story, a story that my aunt actually told me. This is her own experience. So let's just get started with it. So my family, first of all, has always had a connection to the supernatural, the otherworldly, if you will. A cousin of mine witnessed the terrifying face in the courthouse window as a girl in Pickens County, Alabama, during a thunderstorm. Maybe that's why she moved out of the South. She was like, I'm not dealing with this. Then there was my dad's encounter with a freshly dead man on the sidewalk outside the family business, which is or was a mortuary. Yes, my dad grew up in a funeral home, aka mortuary. They were basically like the Adams family of Gary. And if you want to hear that story about my dad, I think it's in one of my other episodes. But anyways, that's what it felt like though. They were very Adams family like to me, especially like whenever my dad or his cousins, well my cousins, told me these stories about playing hide and seek in the coffin showroom when no one was in there, and one of those cousins actually got stuck in a coffin, and that man will not set foot in a, like, they're gonna have to cremate that man, just put it that way. But there is one story that really hits different, and this is my aunt's story, and maybe it's because it's from my God-fearing aunt. And she's not very ghost believing. I don't think she's very much into the supernatural in that way. It could also be because she told me this story while we were sitting in a serene, snow blanketed cemetery in Indianapolis. Maybe it's both, atmosphere and story, maybe it was a little bit of both. But either way, let me set the scene. So it's 2011, and a relative of ours had just passed away. It was actually his wife who had passed away from cancer, unfortunately. And we had attended the funeral at a local Indianapolis church, then headed over to the cemetery. Now, I initially had gone to the mausoleum where our departed loved one would be interred, but something about that place skeeved me out, so I slipped out of the service. It was like it was a modified graveside service because it was so cold. And by the way, my mom later told me that she'd been one of the last ones in the mausoleum and heard whispering from the spaces where the people were interred. She also told me it was just generally creepy. I don't think my mom cares for mausoleums. I think she's like a traditional cemetery type person or funeral type person. But anyway, so I crossed the lawn, taking care not to step on anyone, then slipped inside our SUV. And I remember looking out at the cemetery and thinking how absolutely gorgeous this place was. And I mean, it was in a gothic kind of way. Like, it wasn't like historic appearing rather, but it was, I don't know, it was just a very calming, serene looking cemetery. And instead of headstones, there were plaques set into the ground with a small vase of flowers sat above the plaque. So it was very modern. And I was in the middle of admiring this view and just in my own, like, Lydia Dietz world because I'm wearing all black and everything. And I heard the car door open and close. Now, I'm not going to lie. I jumped almost into the stratosphere. Like, there would have been a hole in the roof of my mom's car. Because I was so, like, I guess I was kind of tense. But luckily it wasn't a mottled gray woman dressed in her Sunday best from years gone by. It was my aunt. And I had my ideas as to why she didn't want to stay in the mausoleum. I didn't express them, though, because, I mean, why? But she was quiet for a second. Then she asked me how school was going. And at the time, I was in grad school, I was pursuing my master's in English, to be specific. But I told her, it's going well and that I need to start my thesis, which was due at the end of the semester. and we got into the subject matter, which was the Gullah dialect, and how like I was gonna formulate a paper out of that. But the turning point was when I expressed how creepy the library at my college could be, specifically at night. And let me tell you something, that place can be unnerving. You get amongst those books and you're in there and it's quiet, and like the way that little side note, the way that my library at my college was made was they had these big windows across the back. In the daytime you could see the Appalachian Mountains and stuff, because I went to school in northern Alabama. But at night it was pitch black, and I used to be like, something could be watching me, oh my god. Another part about that library was that what was creepy was the fact that there had been so many suicide attempts because of the way the library is made. It's like a high rise basically in Jacksonville, Alabama, so that also made it kind of creepy. But like, I'm thinking in terms of like walking amongst all these books and you don't know who else is in there, because usually the library assistant is gone, for that particular floor, or they're all on the first floor. So my aunt laughed at that, and she agreed with me that, yeah, the library is creepy. And then she says, I've had my own creepy experiences at college, or experience at college. And I'm not going to hold y'all. My eyes lit up, and I was like, please tell me. Because I was like, wait, you've had a ghost story? You've been the subject of a ghost story? Let's go. So here's the story. So the year is 1975. And I'm going to tell it in third person, by the way. So a young woman walked briskly down a tree-lined sidewalk, careful not to slip on the icy surface. After all, it was 2 days till finals week, and she did not want to be hobbling into class on crutches, nor did she want to injure her unborn baby. The temperature was steadily dropping as she neared the library, and she could tell it. The cold was creeping up her fingers and through the cable knit sweater that she thought would keep out the Indiana cold. Nonetheless, she powered on, warmed up by the prospect of an A+ on her paper. Suddenly, she sees a figure out of the corner of her eye. At first, she thinks it's another student, someone on their way to class or on their way to the library to get some last-minute research in. But as she turns to get a full view, she notices the figure is ethereal, so see-through. She sort of slides on the pavement but catches herself as shock and a touch of terror washes over her. The figure is that of a woman, light-skinned, dressed in a knee-length black dress. Her hair is perfectly combed, and she is wearing sort of cat-eye glasses. She knows this woman, and she breathes, "Mom." Her mom responds with, "Where's your coat?" The young woman stammers that she was just going to be out for a few minutes, but Mom is not having it. She holds up one hand as though saying, and never mind your reasoning, and begins to walk with her, seemingly to keep her, keep her company. So the young woman walks silently alongside her mother, who, by the way, died 11 months previously in February. So she's still, like, walking with, the ghost of her mother. And she's, like, just kind of in shock. And when the young woman arrives at the library, her mother bids her farewell and tells her, wear a coat next time. Back to 2011. So my aunt finishes her story, and I am stunned yet touched in that moment. Let me specify that. In that moment, I was like, yeah, cool, great. Like, that's very sweet. Because, again, this is the aunt that does not deal with ghosts. That's where the stunned part comes in. The touching part is that it was my grandmother who came back because her daughter was doing some tomfoolery and not walking in the Indiana winter without a coat on. But and it's also stunning because my aunt is the literal meme of a ghost could be breakdancing aggressively right next to you and you wouldn't know it. Like she's that person. Like she's that like I don't believe in them. Or like not necessarily I don't believe in them, but like But after this whole exchange, she sits back and says, "You know, I've never told anyone that story until now." And she wasn't tearful or emotional. It was just more like, "Yeah, that happened. Like this is a fact." And I find myself thinking about that story when I'm out and alone, especially, I mean, well, not especially, but even now. Like, sometimes I think about that story. And I've definitely thought about it at college. That's why I was saying, you know, on the outset, I was like stunned yet touched. But at college, it was a different story. I was like, I mean, I love my grandparents, but I don't need them appearing next to me as I'm walking back to my dorm or my apartment. But it reminds me that this story that you never know who is watching you. Sorry, that sounded creepy. I thought that would sound a little more touching. You never know who's watching you, good or bad, dead or alive, ancestral or non-ancestral. So you never know who could be watching you. Um, but yeah, that's my little story that I had for y'all. I had to write it out, type it out, all the things, and put it on here because, yeah, it's such a cool story. Especially coming from a woman. Y'all gonna be like, why do you keep saying this? But it's just so cool coming from a woman who doesn't necessarily fool with ghosts. Like, everyone else around her has had an experience, but she hasn't. And I can tell, okay, one more story related to this. My aunt lived downtown in St. Louis in this beautiful brownstone. Oh, it was given like Hey Arnold. You know that cartoon Nickelodeon's Hey Arnold. It was on that style. And I was staying there and I had slept in my cousin's room who was off at college at the time. I think he was off at college. Well, he wasn't there. But I remember like sleeping through the night, and the first time I woke up, she was coming in to turn the TV off in the bedroom, and I was like, okay, cool, whatever. So I'm back to sleep. But the second time I woke up was like at 3 in the morning, and we know what 3 a.m. is in the supernatural culture. It's the witching hour. So I see this figure walking back and forth past my cousin's room. And it's weird. Like, it's very weird. And at first, like, when the person, or it, first walked by, I thought it was maybe one of my cousins was sneaking in for the night, and didn't want anyone to notice, so they left the lights off. But then I'm like, no, that's not how that work. Like, they wouldn't be going back. Why are they going back and forth? And that morning, like, okay, first of all, hold up. When I saw that, I stayed up that whole night. Like, I got up calmly, closed the door, turned on the light, and I read, because I was a nerd. I didn't want to turn TV on. But later on that morning, at breakfast, I was sitting there, and at the table with my aunt and my uncle, and I tell her this story, and she's just like, I mean, the house is over 100 years old. And I was just like, that's your response? She was just like, yeah, I mean, it's an old house. Shit happens. She didn't say shit happens, because she don't curse like that. But, yeah. Yeah, I don't know what that was, or who that was. But I also do remember there was just a electric, well, I wouldn't say it's electric energy, because I do remember specifically they were having severe storms in that area. So that could have been the ozone in the air. But that other, whatever that was, where the thing was walking back and forth past the room, I don't know what that was. I don't want to know what that was. She actually moved out of that house a couple years ago. So, we'll never know what that was. But this has been Painted Haint Pod. I will see you on the next episode. I love you all. Thanks for listening. Please remember to like, comment, and subscribe, and also share. Like, if you're not into this, but you know somebody that is into these kind of stories, please share to, someone who's interested. And if you don't like it, that's fine. That's cool. I'm not everybody's cup of tea. But, yeah, so I will see you all on the next episode. Bye.